Ooh, welcome everybody. John Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report, giving you your latest news on Ukraine. Hello everybody on TikTok and YouTube and Twitch and Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. I think that's all of it. Anyway, hey everybody. We are here to talk about Ukraine. As always, let's wait a minute for the folks to come piling on YouTube, on my laptop, and TikTok over here on my iPad. It usually takes under a minute actually. So as always, give your little hellos and say where you are from if you would. Estonia, always excited to see the Baltics here. Hello, Estonia. Estonia with the fabulous prime minister, although actually all of you seem to have fabulous prime ministers. All three of you up there. Oops, my nephew coming in, hopefully. Well, better than the dogs barking. All right, we're about to start here. All right. Yeah, Kukla. Yes, sorry. Already live. I just said Kukla's decided to bark every mid-show now. That's her latest shtick. Anyway, just letting my nephew know that the dog has decided, mom's dog has decided about mid-show, she needs to scream for my attention. And my dog is sitting here next to me like ready to kill her. Anyway, okay, folks, you are here. John Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report, coming to you live from Chicago instead of Washington, D.C. Normally I'm in D.C., but visiting mom here for the month in Chicago. This is my daily show for the latest news on the war from Ukraine. And there you go. The way the show works, about the first half of the show, I will give you the news, tell you why I think it matters, what's actually going on. And the second half of the show, I will answer your questions. On TikTok, you can submit your questions via the Q&A link in my profile. The rest of you can use the comment box at the bottom of your screen. I do accept gifts like Annie's fun hat she just put on my head on TikTok. I am independent media. I'm doing this for free. I've been doing it full time since the war started because I think it's important. And your gifts are what are paying my bills. So please keep them coming. You are making it possible for me to do this work. So I thank you all, but you don't need to. You're free to be here, free as well. Thank you for the snowman there, Allie. And using the super chat on TikTok as well, on YouTube, I mean. All right, let's get rolling, guys. So Ukraine, interesting. Okay, so interesting news on sort of new offensives, whether Russia's going to have some and whether Ukraine's going to have some. Thank you, Phoenix, for those. The Ukrainians say, although I'm always a little suspicious as to why Ukraine would say this publicly, and Ukraine, by the way, has been excellent at an expert at basically faking out the Russians, right? Convincing the Russians that they were going to attack in eastern Ukraine, and then they attacked in the south, and the south. I mean, the whole thing back and forth. Really, actually, just to I'll get my handy dandy map out just to remind you what the Ukrainians did early on, right? So early on, the Ukrainians. Early on, I'm saying maybe July, August, the Ukrainians made everybody think there's a big counteroffensive coming. Oh my God, right? Coming end of August, maybe September, big counteroffensive. The Russians were convinced that it was going to be down here in Kherson and Zaporizhia. Okay, remember now, Russia had occupied like a lot of this area and then this swath right here. And the Russians were convinced the Ukrainians were going to come down and attack here and here, right? So what did Russia do? Russia took a ton of its troops it had up here and it moved them down here because it knew the Ukrainians were coming. So what did the Ukrainians do? They attacked up here. This was the big attack a couple months ago when the Ukrainians just like wiped the Russians out in a big push. Remember, over a couple weeks, it was like boom, boom, boom. Right? That was the Ukrainians faking the Russians out. Thank you, Baby Shoe, for the snowman. Faking them out. Well, this time, the Ukrainians aren't admitting where, but everybody, okay, we all seem to think that the Ukrainians are going to be attacking down here, specifically Melitopol, okay? The Ukrainians have been doing a lot of air attacks. I mean, artillery attacks, probably some missiles too, around Melitopol. And they're doing what in the military is called a shaping operation, or at least let me say, we think they're doing a shaping operation, which basically means you're shaping the landscape. You're shaping sort of the field for your eventual attack. Now, that means you're bombing to kill troops. You're bombing to, thank you, Didi, for that. You're bombing to hit ammunition depots, right? So to blow up the weapons the Russians have in store. You're bombing to destroy the Russian military headquarters. You're doing anything you can to try to make it so that the Russians are less able to fight. And then when they're really weakened, then you attack. So the Russians keep thinking the Ukrainians are going to attack Melitopol. Now, the Ukrainians are saying today that they are preparing a new major military initiative. The upcoming operation is not visible yet, they say. This was from the chief commander, Valery Zaluzhny, interviewing with The Economist. Now, is he telling the truth? Hey, Ginger, thank you for that. Is he telling the truth? Let me put it this way. I think the Ukrainians, generally speaking, have not lied in terms of telegraphing what they're going to do, but they've fudge the truth a little bit. So I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. If you're fighting a war and you admit, as the Ukrainians just did, that they're preparing a new offensive, you got to wonder what that means. Why would they want the Russians to think that's what's going on? Okay, so that's all I'm saying. Now, the Ukrainians are also saying that they think Putin is planning a new offensive as well. They think that he's going to make a new attack trying to take Kyiv and the region here. Now, remember, this is the Ukrainian capital. When the Russians first invaded, remember how they came down here and occupied a lot of this land and got almost to the Ukrainian capital, and then the Ukrainians just screwed them. And the Ukrainians, within a month, pushed the Russians entirely back into Belarus and Russia up here. Totally destroyed the Russian military in that area. What the Ukrainians are afraid of, at least they're saying publicly, is that the Russians are going to invade again, try to take that area north of Kyiv, the capital Kyiv itself, and that they're training 200,000 new soldiers to do it. Now, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. In this case, the Ukrainians saying this publicly makes sense if it's true, right? Because the Ukrainians want first the Russians to know that they know. So maybe the Ukrainians have some kind of intelligence, and they want the Russians to basically be afraid, like, oh gosh, have our military plans gotten out? And now the Russians have to change their plans, this kind of a thing. Second of all, Ukraine wants NATO to know. Now, I would think NATO would already know. Thank you, Baby Shoe. But who knows? I mean, I am not involved on the insides of these things. I don't know what Ukrainian intelligence has that American intelligence does not have, right? Maybe the Ukrainians, because they're so close next door, they speak a common language. At least a lot of Ukrainians speak Russian, put it that way, that they're able to better spy on the Russians. I don't know. But perhaps Ukraine is also trying to put public pressure on the West to say, look, there's a whole new attack coming. It's going to involve 200,000 new Russian troops. It's a huge number, right? When you consider the initial attack by the Russians was around 160 to 190,000, 150 or so, 90,000 Russian troops. Thank you, Paul, for that. 200,000 new troops would be huge. So just another thing to keep an eye on. I do think the Ukrainians are trying to maybe put pressure on us, try to put pressure on, maybe not pressure. They're trying to get those of us in the public concerned so that we put pressure on our governments to help out. Washington Post, a couple really good, actually a lot of good news stories today on this front. The Biden administration is planning to send Ukraine advanced electronic equipment that is used to convert unguided aerial munitions into smart bombs that can target Russian military positions with a high degree of accuracy. The weapons, I don't even want to call it a weapon system because it's not a self-contained weapon. It is literally equipment that you add onto a bomb you've already got, and it helps turn it into a guided bomb. In other words, a dumb bomb. Actually, let me read you this. I actually went to Wikipedia to pull this up. Listen to this. The weapon is called the Joint Direct Attack Munition, or JDAM. Okay. The JDAM is not a standalone weapon. Rather, it is a bolt-on, meaning you literally bolt it on, a guidance package that converts unguided gravity bombs, unguided meaning think World War II, right? When you saw the bombers go over and you drop a bomb and the bomb, the bomb lands where it lands, but you hope you sort of figured out the wind direction and everything else, right? So you tie it on to a dumb bomb, a bomb that you just drop and you hope hits. And with using GPS, in essence, it helps direct the bomb. Now, this was the interesting thing I thought was interesting on this. Was this yes, the key components of the system consist of a tail section with aerodynamic control surfaces. So my understanding of this is, because I was wondering, I'm like, how do you direct a bomb even if you've got GPS? It's got to have fins. Exactly. Actually, Utensil Music is just saying it's like steerable fins. Exactly. So it's got these fins you put on the back that can be steered and a GPS system. It also includes a uh, some kind of a body kit, a combined inertial guidance system, and a GPS guidance control unit. Bottom line is, it's like a GPS system that you tie onto a bomb. I mean, more complicated than that, with fins, and you're able to direct the bomb once you launch it. Super precise, super accurate, and very deadly for that reason. So this is a big deal. The Washington Post says it is not. This is the weird thing the Post threw in their story, I will say. It was not immediately clear whether President Biden or any of his top national security advisors had approved the proposal. I mean, this is the thing I don't get. The entire story made it clear that this was coming. And then at the end they go, but my favorite is, it's not immediately clear whether. So I don't even know what that means, because it's not saying Biden hasn't approved it. It's saying we don't really know if Biden's approved it. This means somebody leaked it. But again, good news if this is true. I suspect it probably is true. I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report. Thanks for joining me tonight. This is my nightly show, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, where we talk about the latest news from Ukraine. And I try to help you guys understand why these stories matter, or why they don't matter. Thank you, Annie, for that. You can leave your questions. We're going to do the first half of the show is news. Second half of the show is question and answer on TikTok. Leave your questions in the Q&A link in my profile. The rest of you obviously can use the box at the bottom of the screen. Please do follow me on TikTok and follow me and subscribe on the other services as well. Thank you, Flower Lady, for that. I don't think I've seen that one. Thank you for that one, Flower Lady. What Flower Lady just did was give me a gift on TikTok. I really appreciate those and the super chat questions and the super stickers, because I'm doing this full time. That's how I get my support. That's how I pay the bills. So I appreciate you guys helping out with that. I've also got a Patreon set up. Feel free to go, again, just go to my link in my profile is the easiest thing on TikTok. Click the link and you'll see a couple different things in the row, including my Patreon, that you can basically, Patreon is a way, anybody who doesn't know, it's a way you can donate a set amount of money a month to help creators. In my case, $5 a month, say. Okay, that's what Patreon is. Thank you for the gift there, Hazel. But lastly, let me mention really quick, and this is not for me. I had put this up last night on TikTok. You've got it. And actually, for the rest of you, you can just go to aravosis.com, which is my series of links. Okay, go to aravosis.com, or just the link in my profile on TikTok. Thank you, Harold. And the very first thing that will come up on that page is a way of contributing to Ukrainian kids by answering their letters to Santa Claus, to St. Nicholas. And it's the most adorable thing. The Ukrainian government created the whole thing, so you can trust it. Very cool. Check it out. I'm going to continue with the news. Thank you, PJ, for the swing. All right, let's keep going. So both the Russians and the Ukrainians are saying there will not be a holiday ceasefire this year. The Russians initially said there wouldn't be a Christmas ceasefire, and the Ukrainians responded and said, well, there won't be a New Year's ceasefire either. Now, in the Orthodox Church, I'm a member, but in America, Christmas is our big holiday. For the traditional Orthodox Church abroad, so like for the Greeks, for the Ukrainians, for the Russians, whatever, Christmas Day itself is not such a big deal. Thank you, Stacy, for that. So saying that Christmas, there's no ceasefire, it's just not as big a deal to them as it is to us here, for example, in America, at least to the Christians in America. But the big deal for them, which we do not have, is New Year's Eve. And I mean, New Year's Eve, sure, we all party on New Year's. But for the Ukrainians, they actually give gifts. Giving gifts to your children, the big day you give gifts to your kids is Christmas Eve in Ukraine. So the Ukrainians responded that they were not going to agree to a ceasefire on Christmas Eve either, in response to the Russians. Now, the reason for this overall is the Russians would like nothing better than a ceasefire. The Russians want to stop the war. They want to at least pause it. Why? Because the Ukrainians are winning. Now, I've always got to remind folks, okay, when I say the Ukrainians are winning, it doesn't mean that, the Ukrainians have won, all right? The Russians still control about 18% of Ukraine, all right? So you've got the Russians controlling swath of land like this and Crimea in the south that they stole in 2014, okay? So the Russians, basically early on, the Russians did pretty well, right? They had invaded and had a ton of land here north of Kyiv and a ton of land over here and over here. The Ukrainians pushed back. I think the number I saw was that the Ukrainians had basically won back 50% of their land, right? So, excuse me, 50% of the land the Russians had taken, the Ukrainians had gotten back, which is great. But you still got the Russians controlling this and this. The Ukrainians are doing very well in the south. They did very well in the east. The Russians are now basically, and I mentioned this the other day, two towns to keep in mind, two words to keep in mind when you're following Ukraine news in the future are the towns in the east of Bakhmut and Kremina. Bakhmut, both of them are more or less, both of them are around here, more or less. Bakhmut, the Russians have been going nuts on, trying to take this town for months, okay, for months. They're proceeding, right? They're doing better in taking the area, but we are talking for 3 months, these guys advanced something like, I showed you guys the other day, it's something like a couple miles. For 3 months of fighting, the Russians advanced like a couple miles. That's nothing. Equally important, the Russians have lost so many men and so much equipment fighting for this town of Bakhmut. And what the military experts will tell you is, sure, the town has some strategic advantages to it. It's got some roads, maybe some railroads going through it, but it's not anything worth what the Russians have put into it. In other words, was it worth losing all these Russian troops and all of this Russian equipment, the military equipment that got blown up or they expended? Absolutely not. The town that is worth it is just a little bit north of there, and it's called Kremina. That town, the Russians and the Ukrainians are also fighting for. That town better, the Ukrainians are doing better. And what the military experts are saying is that town is so much more important. And if the Ukrainians get it, it will then put the Ukrainians in a good position to attacking the rest of eastern Ukraine. That basically it is a critically important town, okay, for going after this and all of this. So Russians being kind of stupid, that's fine, helps the Ukrainians. Let me see what else we got here. So the New York Times is reporting that the Pentagon is expanding the training that the U.S. military is doing for Ukrainian troops. The U.S. has been doing something like training 300 soldiers a month in Germany, I believe, and back to the YouTubers. Hello, YouTubers. Um, I will say this once for folks, and then you can explain to everybody. YouTube, that connection went down on my computer, but TikTok continued, so it wasn't my internet this time. Who knows what's going on? All right, let's keep going. Russia is pissed off about the Patriot missiles. So this is kind of funny. Thank you, Inspired Woman. Um, you know how in the last couple days, probably you heard that the U.S. is going to be, well, I'll say the U.S. is going to be sending Patriot missiles to Ukraine. The story's been out for a few days now. Biden has not come out and said it's false. If the story were false, the White House would have said the story's false. Okay. They've not said it's false. So it looks like the Americans are going to be sending Patriot missiles to the Ukrainians. Thank you, Jazz, for that. The way it works is Patriot missiles are air defense. So they're not missiles that you use to fight and blow up Russian military bases. They're missiles you use to blow up airplanes, to blow up missiles, cruise missiles, other incoming weapons. You could use them against drones, but it would be a waste of money because the drones might cost $10,000, $20,000 a missile. A Patriot missile, we looked into this last night, actually, you guys pulled it up. The Patriot missiles, each missile that goes off could be between $2 and $3 million with an M. Right? So this is not a missile you use just to knock out a drone. You would use this against an expensive Russian missile that's going after a target you really care about. Thank you, Kanalsi, for that. So the U.S. is going to be sending these to Ukraine. That's the story. It's been confirmed by multiple people, and the Biden administration has not denied it. That means it's happening. The Russians are now pissed off. Big surprise. They came out and said two things. One, they said yesterday, and the second one was today. So yesterday, the Russians say, undoubtedly, we will be targeting the Patriot missiles when they're in Ukraine. It was like they're warning to us. And, you know, I mean, I don't quite know why the Russians are saying this. Like, obviously, they're going to target the Patriot missiles. My guess is that the Patriots require a lot of manpower. I was reading today, and actually John was telling me, John Hoover, that thank you, Future Ghost, for that each, well, it's hard to know which actually, whether it's each battery, like each small, bottom line is it takes a ton of men. Yep, and that's the other phone. We'll have to ignore that. I'm at Mom's house, so we've got things like the phone going off. Oh, the things Mom does. Sorry, L. Thank you for that. I was trying to tell you about the Patriots. So, stream, add to the stream. Let's see if the sound is on now. Settings. Boy, I think it's internet having issues today. All right, is sound back now for you guys on YouTube? I will tell you, TikTok, Facebook's all the same. Anything that's not YouTube is going through my computer, so they would all be having the problem. Okay, there we go. Yeah, TikTok's been fine. My connection on the computer is being goofy. God knows why. I know Mom's phone rang and it set everything off. I apologize, guys. We were talking about the Patriots, right? So the Russians are pissed off. They're saying we're going to attack the Patriot missiles in Ukraine. I think they're saying that because they're trying to telegraph to the Americans that you better not be on the ground helping with those weapons or we're going to blow them up. I think that was a given. I mean, I just think that was a given. Like, of course, the Russians are going to attack the Patriot missiles if they're in Ukraine. Duh, that's just stupid. The thing that's interesting is last night on remember those big Russian talk shows I quote to you guys where the Russians basically threaten nuclear war every night. I mean, and it's just crazy talk. Well, last night they get on and they're making fun of the Patriot missiles, and this was great. I was watching a clip before I came out with you guys, and they're saying, "Oh, these Patriot missiles, they're so old, they don't work. They even during the Iraq War, they didn't shoot down lots of missiles, and those were the old missiles. They can't do anything against our big new Russian missiles." Now, put aside for a moment, the Russians aren't using big old Russian new missiles. The Russians have already used their new missiles. They're using missiles that are so old that they're actually using old Ukrainian missiles that they got in the early 1990s when Ukraine made the deal to give up its weapons from the Soviet Union. So the Russians have not a lot of good stuff left. Putting that aside, the Russians are claiming, oh, these Patriots don't work. But then they came out today and said, they warned today, listen to this, of unpredictable consequences if the United States continues to and sends these Patriot missiles to Ukraine. So think about that. Last night, Russia says, these Patriot missiles don't work. Today, they're so pissed off they're being sent that they tried to threaten nuclear war again, which is what they're saying, unpredictable consequences. They're trying to say we could have nuclear war if you send Ukraine these weapons. Well, if we're sending Ukraine weapons that don't work, why would it lead to nuclear war? I mean, if anything, if I were the Russians, I would want us to send weapons that don't work to Ukraine, right? I mean, that's great, right? But this is... they lie a lot. Sometimes they're good at lying. I will say this. The Soviets used to be very good at lying. I mean, very good, annoyingly good at lying. The Russians just kind of suck at it. What do you do? Not much. I am John Aravosis. Thank you for joining us today. We've had a little bit of a technical glitch with the computer, though it's back now. But you guys on TikTok have been here all along. This is my daily show talking about the latest news from Ukraine. And first half hour or so, we go through the news. I've got a little more news to give you. And then the second half of the show, I take your questions. You can submit your questions on TikTok in the Q&A box. Thank you, Elle, for the gift there, and Alex. I absolutely love the gifts you keep giving on TikTok and on YouTube, the super chat questions. I do this stuff for free and I've been doing it full time. So your guys' gifts literally help me pay the bills and keep doing it. So I appreciate this very much. I mean, I always say, thank you, Marcy. I would do this anyway, but nonetheless, if you help give with the gifts, it does help because, I would like to be able to pay my bills, not out of my savings. So thank you guys. The other thing real quick, oh, the Discord. Yeah, do check out the Discord we've got. Thank you, Dan. I'll go a little bit after the show and hang out in the Discord. We've got a Discord set up, discord.aravosis.com. You can find it through the link in my profile on TikTok, or you can just go to aravosis.com, scroll down, you'll see the Discord. It's a big online discussion community. It's free. But if you become a paying member, and you do that through Patreon as well, you can have access to a VIP auction section. But we also have a regular auction section for free members, because I want to make sure people who can't afford it can still enjoy the community. We've had a number of cool things we've been auctioning off. I've got a Zelensky combat shirt right now. We found the combat shirts that Zelensky wears, and we've been ordering them and giving them away as gifts. Not giving away as gifts, but giving them away as auction items. We've got a lot of cool Ukrainian military patches. I've currently got some Ukrainian commemorative stamps that we got this week, including the Russian warship Go F Yourself commemorative stamp. We've got that one. That's been extremely popular. Thank you, Loyalty Gets. I've got, and the last thing is, you guys laugh about this. The people who are regulars know this. So I have been using a t-shirt, a Ukrainian t-shirt that I got, that my sister actually got me. Totally cool, because it's got a great map as my Ukraine map. The thing is, it's got a great map on it. It really, in terms of the news I do, most of the cities I mentioned are on this map. So it's been kind of an easy way of doing it. I've got a blue one in DC, which is the correct color, actually, because it should be blue and red. This color is a little Soviet, but we'll let that pass. But what we're doing as well on the Discord is I am auctioning off my maps, and I will, if you win the bid for the map, we already had Melissa won the first bidding on the maps. I will get the map male, female, kid size, whichever you want, the exact size you want, and the color you want. And then I will show you again during the show. I will use it as a map during my show, and then I'll sign it afterwards as your personalized gift. And again, half the donations you guys make via the auctions, but also through my store, which you also can find through my links at erevosis.com. Thank you, Bonnie. Half the donations go directly to humanitarian aid in Ukraine, and the other half go to help me keep doing my show. So it's a win-win all around. So thank you guys. And definitely keep the gifts going and keep the subscriptions going. Okay, a few more news stories. Russia, in the nuclear war theme, Russia publicized a video of them loading a ballistic missile into a silo launcher in the Kaluga region of Russia. Basically, they showed a video of them loading a nuclear missile up, but an intercontinental ballistic missile, which are the big nuclear missiles. I almost said nuclear there. A nuclear missile that goes way up in the sky and can hit America, can hit Europe, whatever. Why they're doing this? They're doing this because they're trying to scare us, because they really, 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 really need us to stop Ukraine, because it's not going well for them. And the only way Russia can win this war is if they convince us actually, let me step back. The only way Russia can win this war is if Ukraine gives up. Otherwise, Ukraine's kicking their butt. Ukraine's going to probably continue to kick their butt, and Russia's going to continue having problems as time goes on, and probably bigger problems. Ukraine's getting better weapons. Russia's weapons are going down. Other than the weapons they're getting from Iran, they are going to get new drones. They are going to get some new missiles, but those missiles will be counteracted by the Patriot air defenses that we're sending to Ukraine. So the Russians want to stop the war. The way they do that is by freaking us out and convincing us it's nuclear war. So this missile silo, it's immature. I mean, for a nuclear power to literally sit there, it's North Korea, okay? This is the kind of thing you would expect North Korea to do, right? Right? Where he sits there and he, look at our big nuclear missile, look at us load it. And the rest of us are sitting there going, yeah, we've had like nukes since 1945. Yeah? Like, okay. Oh, intercontinental, you mean you've got a missile that can hit New York? Uh-huh. And we've got missiles that can hit Moscow. So what? Right? Bottom line, and I always say this, and I don't want to get into a long explanation, but I think it's important because we always have new people who come to the show, and the nuclear thing usually scares people, understandably, and Putin wants you to be scared. Russia will never attack us with a nuclear missile because we've got nuclear missiles. Most importantly, we've got nuclear missiles on nuclear submarines. The Brits have them on submarines. The French have them on submarines. We've got them on submarines. Russia could launch an attack and destroy the entire United States, kill everybody in France and England and the UK overall, and they would still, all of three of them, have nuclear missiles surviving on their submarines, and those submarines would destroy Russia 100%. The Russians know it. That's why they'll never attack us. And by the way, this is why we would never attack Russia with nuclear weapons, because Russia has nuclear submarines, and those nuclear submarines cannot be hit. So we would attack Russia. We could kill everybody in Russia with our nuclear weapons, right? But guess who wouldn't be killed? The guys in the submarines, and they would launch their nukes at us, and they'd kill all of us. It's called mutually assured destruction, that whole strategic theory of warfare. And the idea is, since we can automatically kill each other and there's no way to stop it, we never would even start to shoot the missiles at each other because we'd kill each other. So every time you see the Russians making a threat like this, it's BS, because the Russians know that they can't use the weapons because we'd use ours back. But guess what? They're doing it for you. They're doing it for all of you, and they're even doing it for our leaders. They're doing it for Biden too. They're doing it for Biden. They're really trying to, they're trying to scare him into thinking that the Russians are just, they're crazy. Oh my God, what might, sure, it's logical that we wouldn't want to attack each other, but Putin's crazy. Putin's not crazy. He's a bit of a jerk. He's genocidal. Thank you for the gift there, Dan, but he's not. Thank you, Sig. He's not crazy. Elise is asking a super chat question. Thanks so much for the Kukla. Oh, okay. Elise is actually just thinking. Thank you for the Kukla John and Sasha show. Technical glitches and all. Thank you, Elise. I swear it's not my fault. Something happened on the laptop. I don't know. YouTube was still here. But thank you for that, Elise. Let's see, a couple more little stories. Russia says it's in no hurry to fix the Nord Stream pipeline. This was an interesting story. This is those two pipelines, natural gas pipelines, that Russia has going to Europe, going to Germany. And remember how somebody a few months ago blew them up? And we didn't quite know who A lot of us suspected it was Russia itself. Well, Russia's now saying, listen to this. This has now been like 3 months or something, at least. Russia's saying that, who was that? Thank you, Kanowski. Russia, listen to this. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said a decision has yet to be made on repairs. Oh, yeah, the damage was in September. Thank you, Blue Sky. Listen to this. It has not yet come down to repairs. No decisions have been made on this matter. They were blown up in September. It's December. They haven't made a decision. What, September, October, November, December, 3 months later, they haven't made a decision on whether they want to repair them. It's their pipeline. Why wouldn't they want to repair it? Because Russia didn't want the pipelines there to begin with. I think we can go through sort of the details on that, but basically, if somebody else sabotaged the pipeline, Russia would want to fix it as soon as possible. It's Russia who blew up the pipelines. I mean, I'm 98% convinced of it. The Pope did an apology today, which was also kind of funny. He apologized. Okay, the Pope comes out like 2 weeks ago, I think, and says, and it pissed a lot of people off. The Pope comes out and says, a lot of bad things have happened in Ukraine, but we shouldn't blame the Russians. I mean, it's a really messed up quote from the Pope. The Russians aren't the kind of people who would do something like that, like all the war crimes. It's probably all of these ethnic minorities like the Chechens, and he mentioned like the Buryats or whatever. But he said that those two in particular, it's not the regular Russians. They wouldn't do that kind of thing. Well, everyone is looking at that and going, so you mean the Christians wouldn't do it, but the Muslims would? Is that what you're saying? Well, the Russians themselves freak out. The Pope today apologized for saying it. The thing that I find hilarious, that should be apologia, should be apology in Italian, if my Italian is still good enough, and probably Latin too. The Russians wanted an apology, so the Pope took it back. The thing is, by getting the apology, okay, the Pope said, this is the best part. What the Pope said was, what the Russians did in Ukraine was genocide, but we don't hold the white Russians responsible. It's the Muslims' fault. The white Russians got him to take it back, saying it's not the white Russians' fault. So by taking it back, the Pope is saying it's the white Russians' fault, right? So it's Putin's fault, and it's all the Christian Russians' fault. I mean, it boggles my mind that, like, I think they're playing the refs. They're playing the referees, right? They're trying to make the Pope, so the Pope now is a little more scared. The Pope is trying to be a little more, the Pope is Argentine. The Pope is a little more scared of commenting and this kind of stuff, right? But it just cracks me up. Last little thing. Oh, yeah, just last little weird story. And this one's still developing. A gift given by a member of the Ukrainian police to Poland's police chief exploded on Wednesday in Warsaw, injuring the chief and a civilian employee at the National Police Headquarters. He suffered minor injuries, which is good. To me, this sounds like a Russian spy put a bomb inside the gift, intending it to kill. This is the head of the police in Poland. Intending to kill him is what this sounds like. Either the person who gave it to him was a Russian agent, or a Russian agent put a bomb in it without the person knowing, which is also quite possible. But they were trying to kill the Polish police chief and have it look like it was the Ukrainians who did it. Crazy freaking story. I mean, crazy story. Last thing is, we do have a store. Now I'm going to go to the Q&A. I do have a store set up as well, store.aravosis.com. Lots of cool Ukrainian themed stuff. Again, half the proceeds go to benefit Ukraine, humanitarian aid. Half of it goes to support my work doing the news about Ukraine. Please do follow me on TikTok, follow me on YouTube, subscribe, probably the most important thing you can do. And let's jump right into the questions. And please do keep the gifts coming. I survive with your guys' gifts, so I appreciate it. Let me put my glasses on. Thank you, Happy Beacon. And sorry, I was looking at Elise's. Thank you, Elise. Q&A. God, it's so hot in here today. Whoosh. What do we got here? We've got TikTok's making it even harder to find this stuff. They keep hiding the questions. Yes, it's funny. Somebody just asked about the police commander. Yep, very strange news. Have you talked tonight about Russia making a thing of showing their ICBMs? What are we supposed to make of it? Fear? Yes, I did talk about it earlier, but in a nutshell, Russia showed off a video of them like putting one of their nuclear missiles in a silo, and it's immature. I mean, our silos can blow up their silos can blow up our silos. If the Russians ever attacked us, we have more than enough nukes that would fight back and blow them up. And they've got enough that would fight back and blow us up. No one is using their nuclear weapons. No one's doing it. The Russians are trying to scare you. They're trying to scare all of us and make us think, oh, this nuclear war thing, it's so dangerous. Maybe we should put pressure on Ukraine just to quit. They're doing it for Fox News, and they're doing it for the MAGA crowd. And I say this not politically, but honestly, Trump has been very anti-Ukraine. Don Jr., all of them, Tucker Carlson on Fox News. Sadly, the MAGA political elites, a lot of the MAGA voters are probably 50-50, but the MAGA political elites, Trump's movement, have jumped onto this whole thing of being pro-Putin and anti-Ukraine. And it's too bad. But they're trying to give them more ammunition as well. So that's why they're doing it. News on Belarus entering the war. You know, no news. The experts still think it's not going to happen. I mean, I was reading even more about it today. Thank you, Sig Sauer. The situation with Belarus is on the border with Ukraine. I remember there's a pin hiding up here in Belarus, so I'm not going to touch it. You've got Ukraine. You've got Russia is all of this, and then way more because Russia's huge, okay? Then around here, you've got Belarus up here, okay? Northwest side of Ukraine. Poland over here. Belarus is a dictatorship. It is run by a guy named Lukashenko. Nasty dictator, big friend of Putin. Putin would love Belarus to enter the war and send its troops across the Ukrainian border just to mess with the Ukrainians and make them waste more of their troops. Belarus does not have a big military. Belarus does not have a very good military. But the Russians, the reason they want Belarus to enter the war, and if not, the reason they want us to, the Ukrainians, to fear that Belarus might enter the war. Look, you guys keep asking, is Belarus going to enter the war? The Ukrainians have to assume that Belarus might enter the war. Even if they don't think it's going to happen, they can't risk not having troops in the area just in case. So what happens? Ukraine has to put troops up here to defend the border. It's a big border just in case the Belarusians attack. What does that mean? Instead of fighting at the front here and the front here, the two big areas of fighting are over here in the east, Bakhmut and Crimea, over here in the south, Kherson, maybe even here, Melitopol coming soon. These areas are really far away from up here. The Russians want to make the Ukrainians take the troops they need from here and move them all the way up here to protect this border just in case. Well, if they're protecting the border just in case and the Russians never invade, or the Belarusians never invade, then those troops were wasted. And instead of fighting in the southeast where they're needed, they're not doing anything. That's what's going on with Belarus, is pretty much they're trying to fake the Ukrainians out in order to waste their troops. So there you go. Thank you, Kay. I'll have another drink. Kay was saying I need a little water. I appreciate that. Thank you. Let me look here. More questions. Elise says, saw a CNN report from Beijing. This is crazy what's going on in Beijing. So quick side story, just because it's important. And, we do cover international affairs on this show. COVID is out of control in China. I mean, insane. Elise was just saying, we'll read this to you. Saw a CNN report from Beijing. Food markets with 90 to 100 bike delivery people now have fewer than 20 bikes. So that's 20% of the normal delivery people, because the other 80 have COVID. Hospitals are making staff with COVID come to work now, or because they have no choice. A reporter yesterday with, I'm forgetting which news outlet, very big, thank you, Russell, very big American news outlet. And the reporter who works for them in China said, and she's in Beijing, the capital, she said nearly every single person she knows in Beijing, every friend and every colleague right now has COVID. Every single person she knows as a friend or colleague has COVID. It is out of control. They are vaccinated. They have their own vaccine. Well, they have their own vaccine though. The Chinese have their own vaccine. The thing is, yeah, their vaccine isn't as effective as ours. I don't want to get kicked off of TikTok, but facts are facts. China did have like massive lockdowns of China to try to stop COVID from spreading. And if you remember, about a week ago or so, there were uprisings. I mean, there were like physical protests in China of people protesting the lockdowns, and the Chinese government kind of freaked out. A week ago, China lifted the lockdowns and COVID exploded. Now, did it explode because China lifted the lockdowns? I'll let a COVID expert put that one in place, but it's really bad. And it's interesting. I guess a couple of things are interesting. China is huge. Yesterday, we looked at the population. It's like 1.44 billion with a B people. Okay. America is around 330 million, 1.4 billion. Okay. Huge population. Even though China is a big, hey, Bonnie, thank you for that. Even though China, is a big country, you still have a lot of people piled on top of each other in a very small space. Hang on a second. Sorry. Elise is saying that their vaccine is about 70% as effective as the mRNA vaccines in preventing severe disease and death. Low uptake among the very elderly. Okay, so a lot of the older people didn't get it. In any case, it's bad. Keep an eye on what's going on. It's very bad. What'll be interesting is, and somebody did ask this yesterday, I think, what'll be interesting is to what degree does the COVID explosion in China affect the economic situation, because China is such a, I would say, important part of the world economy, because, for example, in America, so many of the goods we sell here are made in China. So all of a sudden, if those goods can no longer be provided, what happens? The remaining goods go up in price, right? Inflation goes up. The only saving grace might be if China gets over the COVID, because basically, if you get COVID, most people are going to be asymptomatic, right? They don't have symptoms. The Chinese government no longer is counting the number of people who don't have symptoms. They were testing so many people, they were able to literally put out the number each day of new people with symptoms, new people without symptoms. Now, they're overwhelmed. But could you have a situation where everybody gets it at once, and it's that theory that Donald Trump was initially buying into? I forget the name of the guy, kind of a wacky guy from Stanford. What was his name? One of you will remember this, like, doctor from Stanford who was telling Trump that we should have herd immunity, it was called. And herd immunity basically is what people used to do with, what did we used to do with chickenpox, I think, where basically one kid gets it and you'd put, before a vaccine, I think the chickenpox vaccine came out in like 1995 or something. Parents used to take one kid with chickenpox and just invite all the other kids over and make them all play together, so they all would get it at once and get it over with, rather than, each of your kids gets chickenpox. Well, what I wonder is, so the herd immunity crowd, I'm sorry, we will get back to Ukraine. I don't want to do too much on COVID, but it's interesting with regards to what's going on in China. The herd immunity crowd was saying, hey, let's just let everybody get COVID. Now, everybody get it. Let's not shut down the country. If every American gets COVID, then they get it. They're immune. We don't have to worry about it anymore. Well, now we know that actually, if you get COVID, you can get it again. Thank you, Louis. People get the vaccine, they get COVID. Well, guess what? They get COVID and they get COVID. I know people who have gotten COVID 2 or 3 times. I don't know that I've gotten it once. Maybe I've been asymptomatic, but I've never tested positive or been sick that I know. But you can get COVID again. That doesn't help. Anyway, you know this. A certain percentage can die. Anyway, the problems for China, and I'll stop with this and go back to the news. The problem with China is going to be a certain percentage of people die when they get COVID. China's a huge country. That could be a lot of deaths. A significant portion of people who get COVID get long COVID, we now know. These horrific long-term problems that can affect your heart, your lungs, your joints, your head, your brain. It could be anywhere from 5 to 30% of people who get COVID could have that. In a country of 1.5 billion people, that's a hell of a demand on your medical system if you've got hundreds of millions of people who have got long-term illness. That's crazy, right? So this is what China's going to have to deal with, and we may have to deal with just with the fact that our economy is so tied in with China's in terms of so many goods are made in China that we get. The other issue, finally, I'll let it go now. The other issue is what happens with COVID here. Could the same thing happen here? We are seeing it is increasing significantly in America. The emergency rooms are starting to be overwhelmed again. Apparently, the other day I saw we're at 50% of where we were last. Glasses crooked, maybe 50% of where we were last winter. But whatever. All right, let's go back. Ukraine. Sorry, didn't mean to get off on a big COVID tangent, but it's really interesting because it will potentially affect the situation. All right. Could the Patriot system be delayed due to the technology being used is more advanced than we have been led to believe? It could be delayed in the sense that we are talking about the anti-aircraft and anti-missile that we are giving the Ukrainians. It could be delayed because they need to be trained on how to use it and how to maintain it, right? These systems need to be oiled. So, they need to be more than just oiled, but that kind of thing, right? They got to be cleaned. They've got to be maintained. Certain parts may start to wear out and you've got to make sure you update the part so the whole thing doesn't blow up, right? That takes mechanics. It takes everything. Supposedly it takes a few months to be trained to use them. There's also a situation, now we don't know whether they've already been trained to start with, right? Maybe Biden has already been training them secretly. I don't know. I hope he has been, but we don't know. Secondly, these have to be integrated into Ukraine's current air defenses. Now, we know that Ukraine has got some pretty decent air defenses, right? Because they've been blowing up what do they say? Something like almost 90% of the drones coming in now, maybe even 90% of the Russian missiles are getting blown up. The problem is the Russians are throwing so many drones that some of them get through. Thank you, Al, for the gift. Some of them get through, and the ones that get through are causing damage, right? Thank you, Bonnie. But the I went for the paw scratch and forgot what we were saying about the Patriots really quick. Hang on, let me look here. Oh yeah, so the issue for the Ukrainians, and God knows we're going to help them do this. The Ukrainians already have an air defense system that is taking down 90% of the drones, maybe 90% of the Russian missiles. The Patriots are going to be used to defend the really important Ukrainian sites and taking down the really big, expensive missiles. Somehow, the Patriot system has got to be able to communicate and talk with the existing Ukrainian air defenses so that, let's say, a big important Russian missile comes in so that the Patriot and the old system don't attack at the same time and start wasting missiles. You don't want overlap. You want the system to look and say, okay, that's a big missile going at an important target. Patriot, you shoot. Okay, that's just a drone coming in. Old system, you shoot. That may take some time to set up as well. Okay, so yeah, we'll see. If what will be interesting actually is I did read in one story that the Patriot missiles could, once Biden approves of them, they could go in a few days after that. Let's see if the Patriot missiles are firing in the next week or two. Thank you, Jesse, for the llama. Let's see if they're working in the next week or two. Because if the missiles are actually firing in the next week or two, then it means that we have been training the Ukrainians long before and helping them already do the integration long before. But I hope that's true. I'm not convinced it is happening, but I hope it's true. Oh, that's interesting. Your grandmother was 19 during the 1918 flu, and she taught us to get our vaccines. Wow. Actually, yeah, my grandfather would have been, he would have been 38, 37 at the time. Wow. Grandma would have been younger, but grandpa would have been definitely, yeah. All right. So I got everybody talking about COVID like crazy here. Do you think we're going to see more threats from Russia to the West as Ukraine gets more advanced weapons? Yes. Yes. All Russia has is threats. That's all they've got. I don't think Russia can win this war. Thank you, Benji. I don't think Russia can win the war. So they're going to have to keep making threats and trying to scare us. Now, look, their threats have already worked. Why didn't we give these Patriot missiles earlier? I was watching some of the generals on TV today, and Interestingly enough, the former retired American generals, okay, they're asked about it on CNN, and both of them got asked and said, shouldn't they have gotten this earlier? And one of them was like, well, it's an interesting question as to why they didn't get this earlier. And the other one kind of tried to avoid the question because he was trying to defend the administration. He really didn't. He did not say it's totally okay. No. He he clearly was uncomfortable. And the first one pretty much said, yeah, it's a good question. Ask them. We should have been giving them these weapons earlier. And we weren't, and the reason we weren't is because Russia has been threatening us and acting crazy, and it's been scaring us. That is why Russia is going to continue to threaten, because every time they threaten, not every time, it's made Biden and the other Western leaders go, other than the Brits are more than happy to, help out. But a lot of the other Western leaders, not so much. Burp, burp, burp. Fake. Why do you watch fake Western media? Because Russia Today isn't on in America. Boris, I love that. CNN, why you watch fake Western media? Moose and squirrel. All right. What do we got here? Oh, I see we got people. Don't argue about COVID. It's real. The vaccines work. Masks work. Enough said. All right. What do we got here? TikTok. Pull up another TikTok question. We got a few more minutes here. TikTok. God, TikTok throws in all these stupid questions like to help you out. So mixed in with your good questions are these crazy things like what is your weirdest dream? If you can choose a superpower, what will it be? America. That would be mine. Get it? This is the get it? My superpower is the United States. All right. I'll stop. Oh my God. They're mixing these in. Should I be worried about Belarus or Russia if I live in Lithuania? No, because you're a member of NATO. And if they invade, we're all going to war to defend you. Yeah. So, obviously would not be a good thing if they invaded, but you've got all of NATO defending you. So it's going to be a world war if they do that. And when it comes down to it, let's face it, Belarus, forget it. Here's the thing too with that. Russia can't afford another front, right? Maybe, even for Russia, maybe Russia can afford, because the Ukrainians are afraid Russia's going to try to come down at Kyiv again. Maybe they will. I don't know. But going like up at the Baltics that are up here, why would Russia want troops all the way up here going after the Baltic states? Again, if they do that, they are members of NATO, and it is if Russia attacks the Baltic states, it's World War III. Then we literally have a war. The moment they do it, we have a world war, and we are at war with Russia. We are literally at war with Russia if that happens. So there's no way they're going to do it. I just think there's, they may threaten and everything else. The only way they're going to do it is if we're weak. If we show some kind of weakness, again, and I will say this, I was worried last time around. The last presidency, if you asked me, would America go under the previous guy, if Russia invaded Poland or Lithuania, even better, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, would America declare war on Russia to defend them under the previous president? Really? I don't think he would. I think he would have said, you know what? It's Europe's job. It's their backyard. Let Europe handle it. I do not think we would have upheld our NATO commitment. Under Biden, we absolutely would. What worries me is, who do we get next? I would hope we'd go back to the days where no matter who the Republican is or no matter who the Democrat is, they absolutely would stand by our allies and stand by the NATO commitments. I hope to God that that's true, but it worries me. It just worries me that they wouldn't do it. Anyway, I see somebody who's saying they're a Ukrainian military guy is trying to get a hold of me. If you want, you can email me. I'll just tell you my last name at Gmail. Feel free to email me, but obviously I'm going to want to know you're legit and everything else, and that may not be easy to figure out. But if you want, I'm happy to chat. All right, guys. You know what? It's 1 after. Let me just see if we've got any other big questions here. I normally try to sort of call it quits at the hour to save my voice. And I am going to go to the Discord for probably 15, 20 minutes afterwards. And that requires speaking as well. I see Oh, Carlos. Hey, Carlos, did you mean to put a question in there? That looks almost like the kind of thing, although usually, Carlos, you just give a gift. So I'm going to guess that was, if it was just a gift, thank you. Let me look at just a few more questions here. Yasu Greek food import. I'm guessing he probably is a Russian. Yeah. I would make him have to prove himself. Anyway, and I wouldn't be clicking on any of your attachments. So I posted earlier about 1420 interviewing an older Russian gentleman on the street and said the only foreign media he trusts is Fox News. An older Russian said only ones refuting CNN propaganda. Yeah, well, that's the problem. Oh, you mean an older Russian American, you mean? Or what? Okay, thanks, Carlos. All right, just doing a last little look-see here. All right, guys. Is the last war between Russia and Ukraine? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Is it the last war? Well, is it the last war? Well, no. I mean, depending how this war ends, Russia wants all of Ukraine. I mean, maybe we'll end by talking about this. Russia wants all of Ukraine. Anything short of Russia getting all of Ukraine means Russia's going to invade again. They're going to invade again. It could take 5 or 7 years or something for them to get their military built back up because their military is not doing too well. But they're going to invade again. So the question becomes, how is this war settled in a way? Thank you, Ben, for that. How is the war settled in a way that convinces Russia not to invade again? Well, A, we could give them all of Ukraine. That's not going to happen. B, somehow either Ukraine would have to join NATO so that Russia would know if you attack Ukraine, you're attacking America, and we all go to war. There's no way NATO is going to accept Ukraine. They're just not. I mean, we've already seen that. You know, they didn't want Ukraine to start with for Ukraine wanted to join NATO back in 2008. You know, NATO does not want Ukraine at this point. Not at least some countries in NATO wouldn't want it, and you'd need all of NATO to agree. That's the first problem. Could you put NATO troops on the ground in Ukraine? Let's say there's a peace agreement. Put NATO troops on the ground? That's interesting. I mean, I'd be for that. I don't think UN troops get you anywhere. Who cares if UN troops are killed, right? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, what's that going to do? I mean, yes, I'll feel bad for them if they're killed, but if United Nations troops are killed, America doesn't have to go to war, right? Russia invades, kills United Nations troops, bad Russia, UN very mad at Russia. That's all that would happen. And we'd be back to where we are right now with the Russians trying to commit genocide in Ukraine, committing genocide once again in Ukraine. I really feel like the only way we would be able to stop the Russians from invading again is whatever agreement or whatever it is that ends the war, NATO then puts peacekeepers on the ground, just like we've got in Kosovo, so that it makes clear, like we are right now in Kosovo to the Serbs. We're making very clear, you caused trouble, and we're going to blow you up just like we did 23 years ago. And the Serbs are now testing our mettle on that, and they're nuts if they don't think the Biden administration wouldn't blow them to kingdom come if they tried to go after the Kosovars again. They will. And the same thing needs to happen with Ukraine. We need to put American troops there so it becomes painfully obvious to Russia, you invade, you kill American military, and if you kill one American soldier, it's World War III. And then the Russians aren't willing to do it. But guess what that would require? That would require Biden being willing to risk World War III to defend Ukraine. And my fear is, I'm not sure. I fear that there's a lot of people in the States who might say, well, we're not, we like this peace treaty thing, but I'm not sure we want American troops there. And without without NATO peacekeepers, I don't know how you do it. Yeah, no, I do. Michael Young, I agree with you. I think it is the only, again, I'll leave it with this, but just keep it in the back of your mind when anybody talks peace. Russia wants all of Ukraine. The only thing stopping that from happening. And finally, Ukraine wants all its land back. If Ukraine doesn't get all of its land back, eventually Ukraine's going to war over the rest of its land. Russia stole 18% of Ukrainian land. So, all right, guys, I'm going to go. I will go to the Discord. As I said, we'll go hang out a little bit. There are new auction items I put there today, so go check them out. And some of the stamps, actually, the commemorative stamps, the auction ends tomorrow, so check those out. It's discord.aravosis.com. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for all the gifts. Thank you, moderators, all the crazy people, or for stopping the crazy people. And I will see all of you, a lot of you over at the Discord. But check it out. The Discord's free. But as I said, if you pay, I appreciate it. And then you also get access to a special auction, which is only just the paying members. And that way it keeps it a little smaller. So it maybe gives you a little bit of maybe gives you a better chance of being able to get something. So, all right, guys, I'm going to sign off, and I'll see you guys tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. All right. All right. Goodbye. 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 You guys first. YouTubers. Burp. Oh, recap. We'll skip the recap. I'm skipping the recap tonight because it's 6:07. I've already gone a little bit late. All right, guys. See you guys as well. Oops. And the broadcast.